Time now for an in-depth look at the market news on this Monday, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Jun-sok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, thank you as always for coming on.
Happy to be here.
Well, stocks on Wall Street were down sharply on Friday. Concerns that the trade war with China will flare up again. Korean stocks lower today too as we come back from the holiday weekend. What's the story in the stock markets?
Okay, well, last week and today, depending on the region, you really had a different result. Now, for Chinese market, it was up last week, and today they're off because they're Labor Day vacation, but they seem to be up because, they seem to be getting over the coronavirus, and because the China-U.S. Conflict flared up at the end of the week, that might not have been reflected in the stock market. The European market, as well as the Japanese market, it did fairly well last week at the beginning, but it did not do so well at the end of the week, though a lot of European markets were closed at the end of last week for their vacations as well, holidays. But that also seems to reflect that at the beginning of last week, things seemed to be turning over with the coronavirus. A lot of European countries were starting to open up. But then at the end of the week, we saw very bad numbers coming from the United States. Now, the United States numbers were bad all last week. Partially toward the end of the week, that was, as you mentioned, it was because of the growing conflict between U.S. and China. But also for the most of last week, people have been commenting a lot that stock prices have maybe grown too quickly in April. April was the fastest month for stock index increase since 1987, and a lot of people are wondering whether the current economic situation justifies that rapid increase. And I think some doubts or some conflicts over that opinion is resulting in stock market fall last week in the United States. Now, Korea, it had a very mixed week, though overall it was positive last week, but as you mentioned, it went down today. I think people were very optimistic about getting away from the self-isolation that was in Korea until the end of last week and opening up starting this week. But again, the very bad economic performance numbers as well as more fear about the future export numbers are, I think, dragging down the markets.
Well, Professor Young, consumer prices in Korea last month we see now were up only 0.1% from a year ago. Of course, that's far below the government's target, and the first time it's been below 1% so far this year. What's going on with inflation?
Okay, well, numbers are even worse. The numbers that you cited were over the last 12 months, but if you look at the numbers just from last month, then all of the numbers are in the negative range. The consumer price index fell by 0.6% between last month and this month, and the core inflation rate was 0.3% and 0.1% over the last 12 months. But if you only look at the this month and last month, it was minus 0.2%. And the reason basically is that the demand has collapsed. While we were not in a lockdown situation like Europe and United States, we were in a very self-isolating type of economy. So a lot of services industry suffered. And then we all know about the rapid decrease in exports that we had in March. And in addition, there's a lot of concern over how bad it's going to be, the economy, how bad it's going to be this year. So I think people are refraining from spending. So that lack of demand, I think, is the biggest factor playing into the very low inflation rate.
Well, looking ahead this week, we'll get some figures, international figures from the Bank of Korea. Also, the current National Assembly could meet again before new lawmakers are sworn in. Give us a couple of things you'll be watching this week.
Okay, well, for the current account, we already know the basics of the numbers. The March numbers were actually not that bad compared to April's goods exports and imports, and I think it'll reflect that. The March numbers are going to be not good, but it's going to be not too bad either, but you have to remember that that's an outdated information to an extent. Now, for the foreign statistics, the most interesting statistics which are coming out this week, I think, is the U.S. unemployment rate and the changes in wages. We know that the unemployment rate is going to go up a lot. A lot of people are estimating somewhere in the 18% range. and that will approach the numbers that United States saw during the Great Depression, which was in the 20% range. But it'll be interesting to see what the official numbers are going to be, because we've only seen people who have applied for new unemployment benefits. We haven't really seen any numbers of people who are perhaps going back to jobs or people who have alternate employment. So this will give us perhaps a more accurate figure of what the unemployment situation is like in the U.S. And since the U.S. is de facto acting as the engine of growth for the world now, we'll have to see how bad the coronavirus has hit the U.S. economy and employment.
Indeed. All right, Professor Young, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your insights today. Always appreciate it.
Thank you.